everyone, and welcome to our Nittany Game Week podcast as Penn State heads to the LA Coliseum for a regular season game. Who would have thought that? I'm Todd Sadowski, being joined by Jay Paterno next to me, and Tom Bradley not next to me, but he's right there with us from Pittsburgh. And guys, a lot of travel. We talked about this coming up out west. Not for the Rose Bowl, not for any kind of bowl game. This is for a regular season game. Jay, we'll start with you. They just took care of UCLA, and now it's another West Coast team, 5-0, as they head out to face USC.
Well, I think this is a dangerous game. USC, they're 3-2. They've lost two games they really could have and should have won. The Minnesota game, the wind was 45, 50 miles an hour. Kind of took some of the things they want to do offensively and the weapons they've got out of the realm of using those guys because of the weather. Which, by the way, Penn State fans take note. We go to Minnesota November 23rd, but I think this is a big game in a lot of ways because this is one that if you're not careful, you go out there and get beat.
Tom, they're traveling west. You were out there in L.A. at UCLA. Midweek travel. Your thoughts on beating UCLA and now heading out west to face USC.
Well, I think they're doing the right thing by leaving on Thursday, getting out there, getting acclimated to everything, and getting ready to go. They can get a little workout in while they're out there, so I think that's going to be very helpful. I really like Penn State in this game. I know it's going to be a challenging game, but I just think the way they're running the football and the things that they're doing will create a lot of problems for that Southern Cal defense.
I think when you look at recent performances, we talk about the offense, and if you're a defensive coordinator and you're looking at the tape on Penn State, they've shown a lot. They've shown a lot of different skills players. They've shown a lot of physical play in the running game. Nick Singleton's going to be back. If you're the defensive coordinator, D'Anton Lynn, a former player of your guys', by the way, that you recruited, Scrap, what are you looking at? What are you going to be concentrating on in that game plan as you look at Penn State's offense if you're D'Anton Lynn?
Well, I think Dan's going to try to figure out some way to put him behind schedule. I mean, Drew Aller's not thrown an interception this year. They've been very careful with the ball. They've been running the ball. They've been able to stay on schedule. He'd like to figure out a way to get him behind schedule, so they got to put the ball up and do some different things. And that's going to be his number one task right now. And I think the other thing, too, is he wants to be able to get off the field. He doesn't want to allow Penn State to put long drives together.
I'm glad you mentioned Drew Aller's interception rate because it's historically good. It's like the best ever for any quarterback with the amount of attempts that he has. And Jay, when you have a quarterback that's taking care of the football there and you're trying to create balance with the way that they run the football and the way that he can throw it, whether it be deep, whether it be sideline routes. I mean, Drew has the arm. We've all known that. You're trying as an offense to create issues and mismatches and all kinds of things for a defense. What do you like that you've seen from them the last 2 weeks against Illinois and then UCLA?
Well, in UCLA's defense, there was an interception last week, and that was, we all like to complain about the officials. The holding call in UCLA really was not a holding, but then later Penn State should have gotten a pass interference call that would have helped Penn State. So it's one of those things that coach you kind of take the good and the bad. But I think the thing with Drew has been like last year and this year, he does not throw the ball unless he's really sure of what he's doing. That's good to an extent, but it does, and you're starting to see it in the last couple of weeks. Some of the big plays that they had early on they're not getting some of those like they'd like. Warren has obviously been a great threat, but for them to kind of tackle the games they're going to have to win the next couple of weeks, he's going to have to take some shots, going to take some chances, and you may have an interception or two that pops up. And you're just going to have to deal with that because you're going to have to make plays to beat Ohio State and outrun them. You're going to have to make USC is going to score points. You're going to have to make some plays that are going to. And I think one of the things that was was a good development last week was they were able to work the middle of the field with Liam Clifford some more than they have prior to this. So that's a good development for them. Whether that continues, we'll see.
I think that's interesting. Tom, you brought up the point about the interceptions and the low turnover rate. Jay, you brought up the fact that, Drew may need to do some things differently because of this particular game and then Ohio State coming down the road in some of these tougher games. What are the conversations you'd like to see these guys have during the week before the game and not to be discussed after the game? Because I remember Penn State going to Ohio State and Urban Meyer talking to Ryan Day and telling him, you need to keep your foot on the gas before that game. because Penn State will score lots of points on our defense. There's just certain things that are going to be a reality. What are some of the conversations you guys would like to see the coaches have with the players to be ready for a matchup like this?
Well, I'm going to talk defensively. I think they're going to say, hey, look, we just got to make sure that we don't give them big plays. Let's not get behind, because as long as our offense can stay on schedule and run the ball and do play actions and things of that nature, we're going to be pretty tough to beat. So I would talk to them about, number one, don't give up the big play. Number two, no stupid penalties. We can't afford to get ourselves in that frame of mind where we do something along those lines and put ourselves in jeopardy there. And also, the other thing is just let's get off the field. And the one thing we haven't talked about is the kicking game and how important that's going to be. And it's not only for the field goals, it's going to be the punting and trying to give Southern Cal some long fields.
I think the important thing defensively for Penn State is going to be pass rush, and did I mention pass rush? Because when you look at the teams that beat them, they were able to get to Miller Moss and hit him. And in fact, we'll talk about this in the scouting report. They have 4 wideouts that can play for anybody. This is the best group of wideouts in the conference outside of Columbus, Ohio. And the question is their third wideout better than your best corner? That's a toss-up right now in my mind as I evaluate Penn State. So you say, if their third guy is good enough to beat our best corner, then you've got to do some things to make sure you're not leaving guys one-on-one. And they're tall. They go 6'6", 6'4", 6'1", the top 3 guys. And the 6'6" guy, his name is Deuce, and he really can make plays. And the good news, if you're a Penn State fan trying to figure out who Deuce is, he wears number 2, which is good. But, and then on top of that, when you worry about taking those guys out, now you got a running back who has caught a pass, at least one pass in 50 straight games, who can go out and line up and play wideout and run wideout caliber routes. So those matchups are going to be important. Getting to the quarterback is going to be important. And if they get into the quick game like UCLA did, get your hands up in the pass rush and try and knock balls down. Offensively for Penn State, the question is going to be, can they run if USC is probably going to commit to 2 things. We've got to stop the run and we got to take Warren out. So they'll try and do something with the outside receivers and say, can you make this a 9-on-9 game and can you beat us? And I think, Penn State has shown their ability to run, but this will be the best, statistically, talent-wise, this is the best defense they will have played all year. It's not the same USC defense from a year ago, so it's going to be a challenge in terms of, I think Penn State runs the ball, play actions, take advantage of aggressive safeties, and those kind of things.
They're not going to have a number next to USC. They're unranked at this point. The first team out of the top 25. They tumbled after losing to Minnesota all the way from 11 out of the top 25. They now have 2 losses. So not only are they facing a talented team, they're facing a highly motivated team because USC cannot afford a third loss if they have any aspirations of making the playoff. They also look at a team that was bullied somewhat by Michigan on the ground. And so USC sees some of what Penn State has done on the ground physically. Tom, Jay mentioned the pass rush. Our impact interview guest this week was Rick Neuheisel. Rick also mentioned the pass rush, but he also talked about Miller Moss being a different kind of quarterback that Lincoln Riley has had in the past. We know Lincoln Riley's history at Oklahoma. USC has had Caleb Williams, Jalen Hurts. He's had all kinds of guys, Baker Mayfield. All those guys were much more mobile than Miller Moss. This is a pocket passer with a lot of weapons, as Jay detailed. How do you attack a pocket passer differently than a guy that you have to really be worried about escaping that pocket and kind of having to hem in?
Well, I always like playing those guys because, lanes just aren't for cars. You can do some other, you can take some chances and you'd want to flush him out of the pocket and get him moving and get him out of there and make him, make his feet move and get moving and flush him outside the pocket. So it enables your pass rushers to take some chances and, dip inside maybe and lose a little bit of contain if they have to and get his feet moving because he doesn't like to do that. And so he's very different than when you play a guy that is very mobile. When you play a mobile guy, life gets a little bit different because you have to be more disciplined.
Tom, how tough is it to play at USC? I know you were part of that really great rivalry, UCLA-USC. How difficult is it, Penn State, to go on the road? What kind of road atmosphere are they going to be facing?
Well, I think it's going to be an exciting road atmosphere. The place should be really hopping. Everybody forgets how many Penn State fans are all over this world. And one of the places, there's a lot of them out there in California. So I think, and it's just a great atmosphere. The whole thing about playing out there is going to be exciting. And, That should be just a great experience.
Todd, I think one of the things that I want to jump back to was Tom mentioned special teams. When you look at USC, they are number one in the country in net punting. So they're going to be able to flip the field if they don't. So turnovers are probably going to be a factor. The other thing is if Zachariah Branch gets his hand on a punt, this guy led the country last year in punt returns at over 20 yards per clip. He was an All-American returner. Kickoff, the good news is Penn State's been able to kick it out of the end zone for the most part, or occasionally kick it out of bounds. But either way, he doesn't get his hands on it. So I think it's going to be important that when they cover those punts, there could be a big play in the offing.
I'm sure they're talking to Riley Thompson. Keep it away from him. Go towards that sideline. Do whatever you can. But I was headed towards special teams, and I wanted to discuss it. Tom, you talk about hidden yards all the time. Zion Tracy was back there returning kicks this week for Penn State instead of Caden Saunders. He didn't get a lot of yards, but he did get one that was 9. He did get a couple yards. Like anything positive that you can get other than a fair catch. Talk about how that helps out when you can get positive yards from a punt returner. And then also the kicker, Ryan Barker, steps in there. And I know, look, it's a small sample size, but I think it's important for him to nail a couple successful field goals before you go on the road in tough road environments like USC and Camp Randall when they face Wisconsin in a couple of weeks. So the state of the special teams, I guess, when you have Ryan Barker go in there and be perfect 5 for 5 with his kicks, and then punt returning, actually getting a few positive yards. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's going to come down to the field goal game. I really do. And so that one of the great things about playing out there, it's a nice place to kick. So, the weather's pretty good. They're not going to have any problem in that realm. So I think it may come down to a field goal game. And I think that's one of the things that people aren't talking enough about.
Yeah, 45, 50-mile-an-hour winds at Minnesota. We don't expect that in L.A., Jay. But, the special teams can be such a boost. And you mentioned USC solid in that way. This is that third phase. Everything has to be on point when you travel and you go on the road for Penn State facing a team unranked. But it would have been a top 10 matchup if they could have taken care of the Golden Gophers. This is a talented squad.
No doubt. And like I said, it's going to be, it's going to come down to, like I said, pass rush, those kind of things, and can Penn State get them off balance? Because again, it's easy to say play coverage against a guy like Miller Moss because he's not a runner, but they got running backs who, if you keep 2 safeties high and they've got numbers, they'll run the ball, and those guys are dangerous. So I mean, this is going to be a really good test for Penn State's defense. Going to be a really good test for Penn State's offense. Forget the fact that they're 3-2, and forget the fact that they're not ranked. This is a team that could very easily, with a couple of breaks, be 5-0 right now, and you could be looking at number 4, number 5 Penn State versus number 6 USC.
Well, it's called Nittany Game Week, but I like to look at the bigger picture sometimes and look at the Nittany season. And for Penn State fans, you've looked at the schedule, you've looked at this and said, boy, if they could just pick off one of these 2 games coming up, at USC or home against Ohio State. No disrespect to Wisconsin. Of course, you're going to give them the respect that they deserve once you concentrate on that. But from a big picture perspective, if you want a playoff team in Penn State, one of these 2 games at USC, home against Ohio State, would really go a long way towards making that count. This is why I'm talking. I'm not talking to you or Tom. I'm talking to the viewers who know exactly what I'm talking about.
But I got a golf analogy for you, Todd. I know you love golf analogies. You look at what Minnesota did to USC, and you look at what Washington did against Michigan, and suddenly the hole placement on those holes just got a little more difficult.
I'm not saying they can't be beaten by other teams. What I'm saying is this is how
Wisconsin goes, and they look like they've got their stuff together. So
you know what I'm talking about.
Can we just focus on USC?
Well, we just did. We just talked to them about 10 minutes.
Tom, but it's like,
but I'm going to bring it up because I know our viewers are thinking the same thing, right? You get one of these at USC. You get one at home against Ohio State.
It's just
I know you can't get out of that coach's perspective. That's why I'm not talking to you guys about it. You're not going to give me a good answer on it. But I'm heading out there. I can't wait to see the game at the Coliseum. I'm going to get out there Thursday, try and tour the LA Coliseum on Friday if I get a chance. Just enjoy, soak it up. If you're a Penn State fan and you see me out there, say hello. We're really excited about this particular matchup. Tom, final thoughts on Penn State USC in the regular season.
Why you guys eating too many donuts today or something down there? I don't know what the heck's going on. Todd, I thought you'd have a private plane when you got out to take you up to Pebble Beach and play golf. I'm kind of disappointed in you.
I'm tempted to rent the convertible and head up the PCH. That's for sure.
Well, you should definitely do that. It should be an exciting game. I think the one thing is that the Penn State wants to do is they want to get on the road. You want to, and Jay knows this. When you're on the road, you want to get off to a fast start. That's one of the most important things. You don't want to fall behind them, because then they're going to hold the card. So one of the things you want to do is get off to a fast start.
Final thoughts?
I think it's going to be a heck of a football game. I think it's one of those ones. I think years from now, people look back at us and say, this was the first time we played them in the Big Ten. So enjoy it. There's going to be a ton of Penn State fans out there, tons of people wearing white out there. So just and this is what you got in this conference put together like this for games like this. And I know the people at CBS are excited about having a game like this, and I know the fans are excited about games like this, so enjoy the moment.
It's one West Coast trip a year.
Yep.
You've got, I don't know if it's Oregon or Washington next year, but either
UCLA next year.
UCLA next year. But this is going to be a regular thing. One West Coast trip a year. It seems like that it's going to be set up. So this is the one for this year. It's at USC. Going to be exciting. Been 30 years since these two teams played on a non-neutral site. It was at Beaver Stadium in '94, and of course everybody knows that Penn State team in '94. That was not good luck for the Trojans to come all the way to Happy Valley. 38-14 the final in that one.
But I will say this, Tom probably remembers, we went to USC in both 90 and 91 and dropped two sure pick sixes, one in each game. I won't mention the linebackers' names, but we win both those if we don't drop pick sixes. So hopefully we break the curse of the drop pick six on Saturday and get one and take it all the way.
TJ, thanks for the memories there. That's great. Appreciate that.
Tom, I can still see him.
Couldn't get away without mentioning that. So
Nice.
Look, it's a great setup. Like I said, 30 years since a non-neutral site. This is going to be a lot of fun at the Coliseum. We appreciate you watching. Enjoy the game. Enjoy Nittany Game Week, more of the condensed version, as we're going to give you that stuff. Rick Neuheisel, as I mentioned, the Impact interview guests, our roadmap to victory. We'll talk about the opening drive, all the good things that happened against UCLA. But thanks for tuning in to the podcast, and make sure you check out NittanyGameWeek.com for all of our web exclusive content.